I just want to say that I am super excited, first of all, to have you guys here because it's been a long time since we've done life in real life. So it's good to be doing this again. For those of you that are on Facebook and that are going to be watching on videos later on, welcome as well. We're excited for you. We're glad that we can actually get this word out, this message out in a lot of different ways. I was alluding to this earlier that the workshop I've been working on the last 2 weeks isn't the one that you're getting tonight. And that's good news and it's bad news. The good news is it's going to be better than what I was working on. I'm convinced that it will be because I'm kind of going off the cuff. And I'll actually work on the other workshop later on and get it up online. So, but as I was working out this morning, I just sensed, I heard God's voice in my head and he said, you're going to do something different tonight. This isn't the nights to be sharing how to COVID-proof your life or how to get to where you don't have to worry about the pandemic. We're going to cover that. That's actually going to be covered. But we're going to be covering some other things that I think are really important just on us understanding this time, this season that we're in, and a responsibility that each one of us carry. So with that, it's going to be good. I'm excited. Let's go ahead and jump in and get going. You know, we've been in this COVID-19 season. This is probably the first real pandemic that we've been convinced we've gone through, at least to this scale, right? And I guess the news just came out today that officially now we're over 200,000 COVID-related deaths in the United States, which does put us at a pretty high number. And here's where this gets interesting. You guys have probably heard a lot about the curve, the flattening of the curve, the whole thing that goes with the curve. This curve is based upon what happens every single year with respiratory illnesses. Every single year we have this flu season that comes along. And what happens is, you know, the flu's not there. We have weather changes. We have stress that builds up. It's usually during holiday times and seasonal changes. Our bodies get stressed. We end up seeing people getting the flu, dying from the flu, and then they recover and we get better. We have this curve. Now, going way back to November, December, January, coming out of the UK, they predicted that this was going to peak up here and we were going to see not 200,000 deaths in the United States, but 2.2 million deaths in the United States. So there was all of this energy and attention put to flatten the curve. How can we take, so that this number doesn't get so high that our hospitals, our healthcare workers can't deal with it? So we went through all of these different things to adjust our lifestyle, to do whatever we could to flatten the curve. And the bottom line is, this is how it looked. It didn't look like this. And what we're seeing now is that we're already past the curve. Because even though we read in the news, we hear in the news every day about all the different cases that they're having, you know, we see that the University of Colorado is quarantined because they had 700 cases or whatever. They've had 0 deaths because the mortality rate is down here. We're past the curve. So that's the good news, is that we have survived this pandemic. And we've had some casualties, but it's not quite what they tell us. In fact, if you look at the CDC and what they put out just a couple of weeks ago, they said that 94% of this, at that point it was 161,000 deaths, 94% of those people had on average 2.6 other chronic diseases. So that means these people had cancer and heart disease and diabetes, and they happened to die with COVID or suspected having COVID. And here's what we know is they didn't die from COVID. They died with COVID. And so what the CDC went on to say is that only about 6% actually just died with just COVID, from COVID as the sole cause. So that brings that number down to, I mean, we're looking at a little over 10,000 people. So all of a sudden, this 2.2 million that now drops down to 200,000, pure COVID deaths, we're looking at around 10,000. So this pandemic that we have completely rearranged our life around didn't quite live up to expectations. And that's good. I'm grateful for that. My guess is that they're going to give credits to all of the different things that we've done. But I'm not going to be so quick to give that to them. And here's the reason for that. When we were forced to shut down in March, I had been off social media for months at that time. But I got on Facebook and started releasing videos. The first video I released was, great news, they found the cure. And that was before it really hit the US. They were dealing with it in China, and at that point they said 94% of the people had recovered. No drugs, no vaccines had been released yet to treat it. How did they recover? Their bodies healed, like they always do, like they have with every one of these that we've experienced through our lifetime. And so as we advance forward and they get us ready for the next one, we need to make sure that we understand what gets credit for getting past this curve. What gets credit for us getting back to our life the way that we should. And there's another piece of this that I want to point out that has to do with this. Because every year we see this. We see people dying. But every year we see it with this too. Because guess what? We all have a 1 in 1 chance of dying. Right? I mean, that's what the odds are. And if you take a look at the COVID-related deaths, so this is going back to this 200,000, the average age of deaths of the people in the United States was 78 years of age. If you go online, Google U.S. life expectancy, guess what it is? 78 years of age. And we're one of the few advanced countries, one of the few first world countries that has seen that number decline over the past few years. We see countries like China that is increasing. We're decreasing. Why is that? Well, it's because we're actually getting sicker and sicker all the time. We're getting more sick, so we have more disease, which makes us more vulnerable to things like infection coming along and taking us out. I liken it to this. We're in this smoky season because of fires everywhere, right? And if you talk to the leading experts in forestry and in dealing with fires, they say it's because we've managed the forest horribly. They're full of dead trees. And so it's just this tinder that's waiting to go up in smoke and burn down. Well, guess what? When we are living with chronic disease, we're the tinder that's waiting for infection to come and take us out. And so the health of our country is going to determine what this curve is going to look like. Does that make sense? So guess what? If we want to not be in this curve, we need to figure out how do we avoid chronic disease issues. And the good news is we can. Now, when we take a look, again, going back to the COVID-19 thing, is that we look at the deaths, we look at the 10,000, which is probably a more accurate number of the COVID-caused deaths. Here's the other part of the impact that it's had. And so as we go forward, we're looking at the deaths is just the tip of the iceberg of the problem that we're now dealing with, right? Heart failure. We see that there was a lot of people that actually died at home of heart failure because they couldn't get into the hospital. Suicides. Suicides have gone up. In fact, in California, at one point, they reported more suicide deaths than COVID deaths. We see things like depression, anxiety, a 4-fold increase of depression, 3-fold increase expression of anxiety. Death of children, addiction, violence. We hear about the different domestic abuse issues that are going on because people are at home now. And so we see that we've created a far bigger problem than what COVID-19 did. And again, the challenge is how do we go forward with this? But here's what I want to propose to you is that the real pandemic that we have is chronic disease. That's our problem. Because guess how many healthy people died of COVID? Anybody have a guess? Zero. So even that 6% that they said was just COVID alone, guess what? They were immune compromised. Their immune system gave in to a virus that you and I survived. Right? Hey, we're part of that 99%. Woo, high five each other. We're that 99%. You know, that's not that impressive. What's really impressive is not being part of the 99.9% of Americans that don't make it to 60 without chronic disease. You've got a 1 in 1,000 chance, based on statistics, of that happening. And so what we really need to look at is, what is health? What can we be doing about it? And how can we avoid the next pandemic? Watch this video.
Pain, disease, disorders, degenerative conditions, and death. As the world progresses and advances, people are suffering. Drugs, surgery, and modern medicine have yet to find solutions to the diseases that plague society. Humanity is now locked in a battle for survival, and fear is the new plague of mankind. Fear of disease, fear of dying, fear of your own genetic coding. If life is a game, we're losing. We have a toxic environment, toxic food, toxic lifestyles, and the result is death and disease. And for so many people, there seems to be no hope. But there is hope. You're meant to live a full, healthy, energetic, and vibrant life. I'm here to tell you that health, true health, only comes from within. Your body is a brilliant network of systems capable of preventing and reversing any disease you face in life. Never again will you have to fear viruses, bacteria, toxins, or diseases, as long as you learn what your body requires. We need to break the chains of fear and awaken that light inside of you that you already know.
So what we see is that the real pandemic that we're currently dealing with, and this is going to be where the future goes with things, is fear. Because this isn't a new thing. Do you guys realize that you've been conditioned? I mean, this didn't all happen by accident and with no purpose. And, you know, I've probably, even by a lot of people in here, been called a conspiracy theorist. I tend to think of myself as a conspiracy realist. Because people have known how to manipulate people for a long time. Psychologists understand that if they can get somebody into a place of fear, confusion, apprehension, that we lose our ability to make rational thoughts and decisions. And guess what? There's been some fear, right? When somebody comes out and says, hey, you know, we got this pandemic, it's going to kill 2.2 million Americans. That creates a pucker factor, right? This is the worst thing that we've seen since the flu of 1918. So we get fear. We've been conditioned to believe right now that without a mask, we're going to die. Or we're going to cause somebody else to die. We've been conditioned to think that. We have more faith in the mask than we do in our immune system. We've been conditioned that way. We've been told that we have to isolate and avoid germs if we hope to survive. We've never been taught that before. Why? Because we've been told that our immune system is actually developed through exposure. Why the change? Because there's a different agenda. We've been programmed to think that we need the right medicine or vaccine, or with the people even in here, we sometimes put more faith in our essential oils or supplements that we take just to get back to normal. But guess what? Tonight isn't about figuring out how do we get back to normal. Because I don't want normal. I want extraordinary, right? I've read a book recently that I think is really powerful, and it's called Anti-Fragile. And it's based on this concept that we perceive our whole world is being fragile. Our economy, our political system, our education system, our bodies. And that we're fragile. We're just hanging on by a thread, and that we're about ready to be dropped and break like some fine china, shatter everywhere. Irreparable. But what this book talks about is that, if you break your arm heals stronger than it was before. You go to the gym and you work out, break down those muscles from your workout, they heal and repair stronger than they were before. They've seen veterans who have been deployed come back, and they actually, instead of expressing post-traumatic stress disorder, they show post-traumatic growth. Right? We can go through emotional tragedies, we can grow from it and be better adjusted humans. We can be more empathetic, more sympathetic. We can have hearts that are more sensitive and tender. And we can grow together as people. This is anti-fragile. This is us. So it's interesting. It talks about things that gain from disorder. Things that grow through chaos. So 2020 is a perfect scenario for us to demonstrate anti-fragile. This is a perfect time for us to come out ahead of where we were. But guess what? We have to choose to do that. We have to make a choice to move towards that. And here's the deal, is that we are in a position right now to leave a legacy for our children and our children's children. And it's up to us to decide what that's going to look like. B.J. Palmer, who is the developer of chiropractic, he said, medicine is the study of disease and what causes man to die. Chiropractic is the study of health and what causes man to live. We've spent the last 6, 7, 8 months trying to avoid disease, right? We've been scared to death of this disease. We've been told to basically just get away from everybody, hide, social distance, because we're afraid of disease. We've been told to cover up, mask up, wash up, all of these different things to avoid the disease. We have put more faith in the power of a disease than we do in health, because we don't understand what health is. Do you guys realize our entire medical system is based on disease and managing disease, right? You take medicine to manage a disease. If you're taking blood pressure medication, does it fix your problem?
No.
No, it masks it. It artificially affects your blood pressure and it creates other problems. So what we want to do is focus on health. Because if we can focus on health, then guess what takes care of itself? The disease does. So what is health? Well, let me tell you what health isn't. It's not this. This is going back to 2014. The percentage of U.S. adults with chronic conditions, 60% have at least one. 60%. This is the United States of America, right? That's horrible. We're the sickest of all the developed countries on the planet. Go over here, we got 42% of us have more than one condition. We've already started collecting diseases, right? We don't die from one disease anymore. We got over here 12% U.S. adults, 5 or more chronic conditions. Again, we don't die from one thing. We die with cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorder. We collect them all. Why do we do that? Are we cursed?
No, we do badly.
The World Health Organization calls these diseases lifestyle diseases.
Yep.
Because we bring them on ourselves. We eat ourselves into them. We think ourselves into them. This isn't what health is. This isn't what health is. What's, again, interesting is that the World Health Organization defines health. This is the World Health Organization, right? This is who we've been listening to for a while. They define health as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So I like that definition, right? Complete, physical, mental, social well-being. I would throw spiritual well-being in there too. That's the most important component of it. How does this nurture social completion? A little paradoxical, right? A little contradictory. This isn't it. This is not health. How do we build our immune system? Exposure. Playing in the dirt. This is what kids should be doing, is playing in the dirt. Not sanitizing their hands and killing all of the healthy bacteria that are on them. This is not health. I said 60% of adults have chronic disease. 54% of our children. We're getting sicker younger, dying earlier. 54% of our kids are on chronic medication. 54%. What's the mindset? What's the legacy we're leaving for our kids? We should be ashamed of ourselves. This is not health. This isn't health. Praying for a solution isn't health. Because guess what? We've already got the solution. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Man, this, to me, is not health. As I was thinking about today, and God spoke and said, you're going to be talking about something different, this stirred me up. This is not the new normal. I am not going to sit by and let this happen to our community. I'm going to fight this. People say, oh, come on, Dr. Zack, it's just the mask. Why are you giving so much concern about the mask? It's not the effing mask. I'm here to tell you that. It's a suppression. It's a mindset. It's a belief system where they're taking away our identity and they're taking away our power. Period. It's no other way. Because guess how long we've survived without this? With novel viruses every single year. Germs we're exposed to that build us up and make us more diverse, and we have a stronger, healthier immune system. This is not health. This is not what it's all about. So what is health? Well, let me ask you this. What is coldness? Coldness is a non-entity. Coldness is the absence of thermal energy. Okay? You guys get that? Energy. Vibrating. Creating heat. You go outside, and I was actually outside, I don't know, Saturday or Sunday, and it was 70 degrees, beautiful, and there was cloud cover. All of a sudden, the cloud cover broke, and it was hot. What is it? That's thermal energy. The absence of thermal energy was I was cool. The presence of it, I became warm in a hurry. What is darkness? Darkness is a non-entity. It's the absence of light energy. If you open up the door to a dark room, does darkness pour out? No. But what pours in? Light. So what about sickness and disease? Everything about us is energy. So sickness and disease is a lack of the expression of vital health energy. You know, in the Bible, in Genesis, it says that God created humans from the dust of the earth. So basically, we're dirt. We're good-looking dirt, right? We're good. This is a good thing. God did good with the dirt. But then it says He breathed into our nostrils the breath of life, and we became living beings. The Hebrew word for breath of life is neshama, and it means energy and intellect. So we've got this vibrational, healing, intellectual, smart energy that flows through us that animates the dirt that we are. And if we have the full expression of that energy, we have health. And it's about vibration, because energy is about vibration. If something is vibrating at a very high level, there's more energy associated with it. As there's less energy associated, it vibrates at a lower frequency. Our bodies change in frequency based upon how they're expressing life and energy. So every organ in our body has a specific vibration that it's supposed to operate at. And when it's operating at that, we have healing, health, regeneration, and life and vitality. But if that vibration decreases, now we've got less energy than we should. And it's kind of like this light bulb over here. If we got this light bulb and it has this energy that's available to it, but we start reducing that energy, and it can be slow enough that we don't even really notice it, but we start turning down that power. If we continue to do that long enough, pretty soon things get dim and go dark. And that's how symptoms manifest. You guys realize that by the time that we have a symptom, the disease has usually been there and is fairly advanced. And we'll just wake up one day and go, dang, how did I get so dim? When did the darkness set in? And it's been a gradual thing. But guess what? The power is still there. It's just not being expressed. Right? Every single person that comes in here with chronic debilitating disease, one of the first questions I'll ask them is, if you were to cut your finger, would it heal? I've never yet in 30 years had somebody say no. So what does that tell me? There's still this healing energy in their body, and it's getting to their finger. But it may not be getting to their brain or their heart or their lungs or their digestive system or their knee or their ankles or their feet. Why is that? It's an interference to the expression of that energy. So life and health is about energy and vibration. And guess who controls that?
We do.
Yeah, we've got the opportunity to do that. We can actually make that happen. So here's the keys to making that happen. It starts with our thoughts. Caroline Leaf says the thought that you're thinking right now is affecting the 75 to 100 trillion cells in your brain and your body at quantum speeds. The thought you're thinking right now, bam, is affecting your cells right now. And guess what? Your thoughts are energy. That's what they are. Your thoughts are energy. And they vibrate. They vibrate at different frequencies, right? You can have good thoughts up here, powerful thoughts, thoughts of purity, love, ambition, passion, joy, peace. And we vibrate at a high level. Instantly, it affects our cells, right? We can have thoughts of shame, fear, grief, dread, regret. And we vibrate at a lower level. Instantly affects our cells. And here's how it affects it, is that when we're thinking this energetic thought, it actually creates proteins inside of our brain. These proteins form little branches that branch off of the neurons of our nerve system, and they actually form these pathways of communication. And what we know is that if we're having a high vibration thought, it creates healthy protein matrix, and those branches are really effective in communication, and they actually promote health to all the surrounding brain tissue. And we have healthy brains, healthy brain chemistry. When we have low vibration thoughts, like the fear and the panic and the dread and the hate and the resentment and all this stuff that goes on, shaming somebody for not wearing their mask up over their nose or whatever that looks like, what happens is we still have proteins that are developed, but these proteins are unhealthy. And they form an unhealthy matrix on that nerve, and we still have nerve pathways that are created, so it can become a habitual communication pathway. But it damages the surrounding brain tissue and can cause chemistry imbalances. So forever we thought mental illness and different mental problems were caused by a chemical imbalance. Now we recognize that that chemical imbalance is caused by thinking wrong. Thinking the wrong kinds of thoughts. So guess what? We can choose thoughts that we're going to have. We can choose thoughts of, as Paul said when he was in prison, whatever is good and pure and noble and worthy of praise, fix your mind on these things. Be committed and attentive to thinking about those things. So our mindset is where it all starts. But then we also know nutrition, right? Nutrition is an important part. Do you guys know that food vibrates? You can actually look this up. You can look up the different high vibrational foods. And guess what those are? Yeah, organic fruits and vegetables, green leafy things, pasture-raised chicken and eggs, grass-fed beef, lamb, and bison, wild-caught. It's the stuff that we talk about at every one of our nutrition seminars because they vibrate and they bring a higher level of function and healing to our body. Guess what foods are low vibration? Sugar. Any kind of processed stuff. Anything that's processed. In fact, the title of this portion of the keys I've referred to in the past as getting outside of the box. Anything that's packaged and prepared. Anything that's genetically modified. Anything that's been sprayed with chemicals and pesticides and artificial fertilizers. Those things will lower the vibration. So it's keeping things real, the way God intended for us to see it. How about exercise? Exercise can change your vibration quicker than just about anything. It's an important thing. And especially when we have the right mindset for it. Right? We can dread exercise and we can go into it and we can kind of plod our way through, or we can embrace it as something that is raising up our vitality and energy. And so our mindset is going to determine what kind of benefit we get from our exercise, because it all works together. Here's one we like to overlook, and this is a critical one, is rest. It's all about energy, but we're more like batteries than we are generators. We need to recharge. And this isn't a new thing, right? I mean, if you go back to the Bible, and there's this guide on how to survive as humans in a society together, and they broke it down to 10 main rules that are really good guidelines for that. You guys have heard of the 10 Commandments, right? We get along better as a society when we're not killing each other, right? When we're not having adultery, when we're not stealing from each other, when we're not blaming people for things they didn't do, or we get along better that way. But you know what made it into that top 10 list? It said, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. The Sabbath day was the Hebrew day of rest, to reinvigorate their bodies, to recharge their batteries. And this is critical. Why would that make it into the top 10? Because we have to recharge. We have to do it. We get along better when we're healthy. And when we're running out of gas, when we're burning the candle at both ends, we're not able to give ourselves to each other the way we should. Everything starts to suffer. Rest is critical. Alignment. This is a critical piece as well. Do you guys realize that your posture affects every physiological function in your body? Every thought, every emotion, every neural synapse, every brain communication to your body is affected by your alignment. How much energy it takes to stand up against gravity is affected by your alignment. And so we start shifting out of alignment, it affects neural conduction. It affects energy to stay upright. It affects our moods and our emotions. And so as we talk about this is why this becomes such an important part of it, is that we don't think about it as being a critical piece. But we could be doing all those other four things, and if we don't have proper nerve communication, if we got interference, if we got too much stress going on to keep us from falling over, it's going to reduce our energy. It's going to impair our healing. It's going to impair our life. So when we put these fundamentals together and practice them, we get it vibrated at a really high level. So when that's happening, guess what happens to disease?
It goes away.
It goes away. I was talking to a guy Friday that a year ago had been diagnosed with brain cancer. And it had spread to his lungs. And it had gone to his liver and his kidneys and had pretty much spread everywhere. He was weak enough that they didn't want to go through the normal route with Western medicine, but he was weak enough they couldn't even get him to an alternative healthcare clinic. So what they did was they started getting him adjusted. They started giving him vibrant nutrition. They changed him to a ketogenic plan, but it was full of living foods. And they detoxified him and gave him rest. He just went back in about a week and a half ago for a PET scan, and there's one small spot on his lung that still is hot, and the rest of it is completely clear. And here's the beauty of this, is that, health has no limits when we're letting the body do what it's created. Right? Your body doesn't care what flavor of novel coronavirus you just came in contact with. It doesn't care. It doesn't care the name of the disease that the doctor told you might have. That's something that we made up. Your body doesn't care. It's not waiting for the right diagnosis so it knows what to do. It's waiting for that energy to be released. And that starts with us living a lifestyle that raises our vibrational level. Now, here's the part I really want to get into. And this is the part that was just burning in my heart, even more important than healthy living habits, because you guys know that, you're doing that. We can talk about that ad nauseum later on. But this is it. We got to leave a legacy. We're at a crossroads right now. Do you guys realize that? We are at a crossroads. And we're seeing our society come to this point now with, what are we going to believe? We've been fed so much fear that right now we're impressionable. We're doing things that we would never dream we would do. We're seeing things happen in the United States of America that we never dreamed would happen here. And I don't like what's happening. You know, Albert Einstein said there's two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. We get to choose which one of those ways we're going to live. And we get to choose which one we're going to leave as a legacy. Now, I just got news today that Dr. Cody and his wife got keys to their new chiropractic office in California. They're going to be opening right away. And we get to leave a legacy. We get to see, you guys all look, excuse me for this. You guys know that I'm not real unless I'm trying. But you guys all know Dr. Cody, and you miss him dearly like I do. But he's taken this to the next level. The legacy that we're leaving through him is going far beyond where we are. But that's not what I'm seeing in this world. I'm seeing decay. I'm seeing limited beliefs. I'm seeing fear. I'm seeing kids growing up with cowardly adults feeding messages into them that they shouldn't be believing. That's our responsibility. We've got to change that. You know, we're talking about getting back to new normal, and we've got all these different things that have been laid out for us to get there. This is not going to be the new normal on my watch.
When students return to on-campus instruction this year, GP Middle School will begin using a pod system to help ensure the safety of all students and staff. Students will be assigned to a pod prior to their first day of on-campus instruction. In these pods, using district technology, students will complete work for their core classes and some of their electives. Upon arrival at the school, GP Middle School students will be dropped off and use the stripes on the concrete to maintain social distancing while they wait to be screened at the front door. After being screened, students will walk on the middle red lines to their assigned spot in the hallway where they will wait until school starts. At that time, an adult will tell you when to go to class. Rather than have students rotate from class to class, as has been the norm in past years, teachers will instead rotate between these student pods to provide supervision and instruction. This will minimize the amount of interpersonal contact occurring each day. Students will be allowed to leave their pods in order to attend specific electives like band that depend upon in-person rehearsal or specialized technology. When moving through the halls, students should only walk on the right-hand side of the hallway to help control the flow of traffic. You still must maintain a distance of 6 feet from other students while walking. When students wish to use the restroom, the student's teacher will enter the student's name and destination into our online tracking form. Each pod will be assigned to a particular restroom. Students should make their way to the restroom by walking on the right-hand side of the hallway. When they arrive, they should let the staff member who is outside the restroom know that they're there, and they will record the information in the online tracking form. When it is their turn to use the restroom, the staff member will let them in. When they leave the restroom, the staff member will enter the student's name into the online tracker, and the student should return to the class by walking on the right-hand side of the hallway. When the students enter the classroom teacher will update the online tracker. During lunch, students will eat in the classroom. Students will have their lunch brought to them by campus staff. Students will also get 2 outside mask breaks during the morning and 2 mask breaks in the afternoon. Students will need to request this break from their classroom teacher and walk to the front doors of the building, utilizing the right-hand side of the hallway. During your outside break, you may walk without your mask on the path that will be laid out for you by our staff members. Students are still expected to maintain social distancing. At all times, students and staff should maintain safe distance and wear appropriate safety equipment. As always, our highest priority is to maintain a safe and healthy learning environment for everyone.
You know, that's laughable, but that's not funny. You know, I don't know about you, but that pisses me off that that's even something that anybody is entertaining doing.
Yeah.
That's happening in our school systems.
Is that really happening?
Yes. This is actually what the CDC, the guidelines that they presented were, and when they came out, people were going, You have got to be out of your mind. But this is what's being introduced if kids are allowed to go back to school at all. If they're able to go back to school at all. We've got kids, kindergartners, first graders, second graders that are doing Zoom calls for school. I mean, I can't imagine being a kindergarten teacher anyway. But if I had a bunch of little kindergartners in here, I could at least see them. And I would know where they are and I could do some things to entertain them and contain them. You can't do that when you're doing that on a Zoom call. We have got such an upside down, twisted image of what life looks like right now. And guess what it's all based on?
Fear.
Fear. And you know what? This didn't just happen. This has been in the works for a long, long time. And you can, if you look up the Rockefeller Foundation, we've talked about for a long time, because going back to 1910, Rockefeller hired 2 guys to go out and investigate healthcare institutions. The Flexner Report, if you've ever heard about it, these 2 guys, the Flexner brothers. And Rockefeller understood that he'd made billions in petroleum, but the future was going to be in healthcare, especially if you could use patented products where you would get the resources from. And so the Flexner brothers went all across the country and they graded healthcare institutions, chiropractic schools, homeopathic schools, naturopathic schools, and medical schools. And they gave them grades based upon how pharmaceutically minded they had gone. And those that were most pharmaceutically driven towards medicating everybody for everything got really, really high grades. And they started this campaign by the American Medical Association to weed out all of the quacks that didn't fit into that. And so guess what? This has been going on for a long time. Right now they're looking at mandating the COVID vaccine. We just got done in January having religious rights for exemption and philosophical rights for exemption for vaccine for our kids here in Colorado. They have taken away our rights to make medical choices. This isn't an accident. And so what we see here is that we're in this position right now where we're creating zombies. This is not what life is. Did you see them when they got their mask breaks and they were sitting outside?
Yeah.
Remember getting excited about recess? This is what their recess is going to look like. This is insane. This is insane. And again, it's not a new thing. I saw this interview. We were watching it earlier today. I actually saw it last night and I watched it several times. But it is based on asking Jim Caviezel a question about something that Ronald Reagan said back in 1964. And I want you guys to watch this.
Was Ronald Reagan gave a speech, a Time for Choosing speech in 1964, and he said, "You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness." What can Americans learn from Ronald Reagan? What are your thoughts on that at this moment in time?
Yes, that's right. He said that, and he said now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war. But there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson in history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is a specter our well-meaning Christian liberal friends, our priests, bishops, and pastors refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives us no choice between peace and war, only between fight and surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we will have to face the final demand, the final ultimatum. And what then? When Satan has told the people of this world he knows what our answer is going to be, he has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of his Cold War, and someday when the time is right to deliver his final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because you see, by then we will have been so weakened from within, spiritually, morally, economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better red than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know it and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Ridge have refused to fire the shot heard around the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our beloved dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis did not die in vain. Where then lies the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all, that you and I have the courage to tell our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which evil must not advance. In the words of Reagan, evil is powerless if the good are unafraid.
Did you guys catch that? And that's passion right there. Evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. Now, I want you to write that down. Take that word home with you. You know, how do we make a change? How do we do this? You guys feel like there's hope to turn this thing in the right direction? It comes by us being unafraid. And that means being willing to take ridicule, to be called that conspiracy theorist, to be hated on. If you're speaking a truth, it means standing up for that. You know, the quickest way to peace is to take a knee. Man, that's no good. That's not even an option. But we have to stand up. You know, we got to get the message out. And how do we do that? We do it with care and compassion. You know, one of the other videos that I put out early on, and it actually got, I think, more views than anything else, was called Compassionate. And that's being pissed off, but compassionate at the same time. And I think that's what we have to get to. We have to get to the point where we just say, I will not take this anymore. Draw a line in the sand and say, no, not on my watch. You know, I take great responsibility for the health and well-being of this community. And every time I walk around, and I'm the only guy out there that's walking with vitality and energy and passion and purpose, I'm missing the mark. And that's why you're here. That's why you're here. That's why everybody who's watching and getting this message is here, is that we have got to take a stand. We have got to rise up, and we have got to become brave, and we've got to speak, and we've got to share this with our kids. We got to share this with our families. We've got to let them know that there's a better way of thinking. There's two ways to live your life. One is though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. So guess what? I'm expecting miracles. I'm expecting we're going to see a massive turnaround, and we're going to see a reset. And I'm believing that everything that the enemy has meant for harm, God is going to use it in our lives for good. And we're going to see our society transformed. But that starts here, and that starts now with us. You guys on board with me? And we've got to get this message out. And we've got to be willing to take a stand, because it's going to be worth it. Our children and our children's children are going to be grateful.